Hey, Raymond here from the Beginner Photography Podcast, and there has been a lot of uncontrollable sobbing in this household in this past week since the Dodgers have lost the World Series to the Boston Red Sox. I'll be okay, but if I get choked up in today's interview, just please forgive me. I'll be fine next week. Okay, let's get into today's interview.
Welcome to the Beginner Photography Podcast with Raymond Hatfield, the podcast dedicated to helping you grow your photography skills. Raymond interviews the world's top photographers in their field to ask questions that will get you taking better photos today. Now, with you as always, husband, father, home brewer, LA Dodger fan, and Indianapolis wedding photographer, Raymond Hatfield.
Welcome back, one. Welcome back, all. Everybody, man, thank you so much for listening to the Beginner Photography Podcast. I am Raymond Hatfield, your host. I'm super excited to be here for a lot of reasons. One of them being I love hanging out with you guys. I know that we can't really see each other or, be in the same room as each other, but just knowing that you guys are here and listening to this, I think that's enough to get me like really excited. I love it. I also, of course, love being a part of the Facebook group and interacting with everybody there. However, this week I have been slacking a bit on my duties in the Beginner Photography Podcast Facebook group because this has been a really, really eye-opening week for me. As you know, last week I talked about kind of my plans for the future and what I plan to do with my photography business and how I plan to make money and build something with my photography business. But this week, last week, I guess 2 weeks ago, Vinny Puglisi, who, if you are a longtime listener of the podcast, will remember from episode 50, he is just an incredible photographer, has shot every major sporting event from the Super Bowl to the World Series and everything in between, Final Four, Stanley Cup. I mean, this guy is just like top of what he does. And he reached out to me. He's originally from Indiana. Well, he's originally from New York, but lived in Indiana for a long. Anyway, it doesn't matter. He reached out to me on Facebook and said that he was coming to Indianapolis and was hosting a mastermind group in person. And for those who don't know, a mastermind group is when I guess it'd be like business owners to get together and they talk about their problems or issues that they're having, and everybody kind of becomes a communal mind and talks about it, right? So I thought I would love to, for one, just meet Vinny Puglisi here because this is going to be incredible, and for two, it's great to get out of the house and surround myself with other business owners. I was really excited about this, and it's so funny. When I showed up, I met a lot of great people, and I didn't know at first if it was just going to be just photographers or if it was going to be other business owners, because I know Vinny does work with other creative entrepreneurs. And when I showed up, that's exactly what it was. It was just an array of different skill sets, right? So I was a wedding photographer. There was somebody who does editing and copywriting, and there was a couple who's working on some coaching for veterans, and then like life coaching and stuff. It sounds like really cool stuff. There was another guy, Jeff, who I sat next to, who owns and runs I guess like a digital agency where they create websites and like video for other businesses and stuff. So at first I kind of like, I'm not sure what I'm going to have in common with these people because they have nothing to do with photography except for Jeff, who does some video work. I thought, I'm going to have nothing in common with these people. How am I going to be able to help them with their problems? And I was a little worried that I was just going to be sitting in the corner and not be able to contribute to the conversation and help these other people who are having problems. And what I found was really interesting. We all have the exact same problems. Everything that these other business owners were talking about I could relate to 100,000%. I specifically got into videography and then photography just so that I wouldn't have to do any sort of writing in class in high school, and yet I found myself with ideas to help one of the other members who that's what she does. She's an editor, does lots of books, blog posts, like all sorts of like writing specific stuff. And I was able to, I don't know, I felt like I had some pretty good suggestions, and other people had great suggestions for me, even though they had nothing to do with photography. It was a really, really great just to talk it out with others, right? Face to face. And it's crazy how sometimes the answer that you're looking for is right in front of your face. But it's not until you talk it out loud that you can actually get that clarity on whatever it is that you need help with. And I just found it incredibly helpful, this whole meeting with all these other creative entrepreneurs. It was really inspiring, and it was just a blast to be in the room with them. So I want to know from you if you have ever had a moment like that. Have you ever had this problem that was, just consuming all of your time, all of your energy and your brain power? And then when explaining that situation to a friend to try to find a solution, you end up just figuring it out yourself. I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing, right? I think it's a good thing. I think it's a good thing. At least in my case, it was a good thing. I wasn't being steered in the wrong direction, and it was great because as I was talking about my issues or concerns, I started to formulate it in my head, and then everybody kind of parroted it back to me like, "Hey, I think this. I think this is a great solution for you." And it was just a wonderful, wonderful time. So this whole week has been coming back, more strategic planning, and kind of figuring out once again how I'm going to proceed moving forward to the future. So again, great week. So that's it for that. I want to transition now for just a moment. I haven't done one of these in a while, but I want to do an iTunes review. Like I said, we haven't got to one of these in a while, and I love doing them because of you. You guys are the reason why I do this podcast. So this week's review comes from Nettie, who's actually from San Francisco. We've chatted a few times. And her 5-star iTunes review is called Relit My Fire. She says, "Hi Raymond, I am so thankful that I stumbled upon your podcast a few weeks ago. You and your guest have renewed my fire within me for photography that was originally lit almost 2 years ago. With a hectic work schedule and getting frustrated with not seeing any improvement in my photos, I put my camera on the back burner for the past 6 months. After listening to your podcast just once, I was hooked. You are so refreshingly real and humble. That's ridiculous. It is a joy to listen to your interviews. This is something new to learn, or there is something new to learn in every single episode. I love hearing how photographers first got their start, as oftentimes it validates my own dream to one day be great." Nettie, oh my gosh, thank you so much for that review. So much in that speaks to me, right? I know that you might be listening right now and you may think, hey, I have a hectic work schedule and I feel like I'm not seeing improvements in my photos. And this is just kind of a phase, right? This is just a short creative rut that you're going through, and you just have to push through it. It took Nettie 2 years to get to this point, to be able to push through this. And you will be able to too. I promise you. And I would love to, I just know that a lot of you resonate with that right there. So Nettie, again, thank you so much for that amazing iTunes review. If you're listening to this and you haven't already, would you please consider leaving a review for the podcast? With every single rating and review, it's possible that one more person can find the podcast who is in a spot like Nettie, who maybe they're about to give up on photography and they just want to give it one last shot, again like Nettie here, and your review could help change somebody's life. That's it. You could do it. You could be the change that you want to see in the world. How great is that? With a simple rating and review. So again, if you did that, I would be so appreciative. Okay, today's interview, we're going to get into this, is with Vanessa Joy, and we're talking all about posing. So you may remember back in episode 93, I had Meg and Josh Soder on from who are the creators of the Unposed Field Guide, which I use and absolutely love in my photography. And there was a huge response after that interview of people who resonated and loved listening to their take on it. And I know that a lot of listeners actually went out and bought a set of their own Unposed cards as well and have been doing great things. But I know also from some of the feedback that some of you prefer more like exact step-by-step instructions rather than the prompts and inspiration that the Unposed Guide gives you. And they both work. They both work. Again, it just depends on your style. So in this episode, we are going to cover, or I guess Vanessa Joy covers, a lot of that, more of the specifics on exactly what to do. So hopefully you can get a lot out of this interview. And if you are a premium member, you are going to hear so much extra, like the must-have poses and portraits that you must nail on a wedding day. Vanessa shares those, how to build confidence when you first start posing, and even how to get unnatural couples looking their best in front of the camera. And again, so much more. And that is for the premium members who really want to take their photography to the next step. And if you're not a premium member, but you do want to hear the whole interview with Vanessa Joy, then just head over to the website to sign up. That's beginnerphotographypodcast.com. In the top right, there's a button there to take you over to Patreon, where you can become a premium member of the podcast and hear everything that Vanessa has to share. So without any further ado, we're going to get into this right now. My interview with Vanessa Joy. Today's guest is Vanessa Joy, a wedding photographer with over 19 years of experience. She's also a photography educator, and after seeing her YouTube video, 3 Overlooked Posing Secrets, and then seeing the success that I had in my weddings from her suggestions, I knew that I had to get her on the show and find out more. So today I'm super excited to talk to her about her approach to speed posing. Vanessa Joy, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really great to be here. I love what you're doing in your audience. They're just fun people I want to talk to.
They are fun people. They're so much fun. I think what's most fun for me is that just being in the Beginner Photography Podcast Facebook group and seeing all the fun interactions, which you must see as well, being an educator, like I said, and just seeing the growth of people, that's what gets me the most excited. And I think sometimes, I guess I've been shooting weddings now, not 19 years, but I think I've been doing it professionally for 5 years. And in that time, it's easy to feel like, oh, I'm just kind of going through the motions. I got this figured out. But then you find a video like yours, 3 posing tips. They're like, oh, I didn't even think about this. And then it just changes everything. And it's fun to still see that on my end, that you can still learn and grow. But I want to know more about you and your beginnings. I want to know, how did you get your start and learn photography?
So I have that classic story where my mother was a photographer and my grandmother was actually not a photographer. I mean, she had a lot of cameras, but she was a journalist, and one of the first women journalist in the state that I live in New Jersey.
Wow.
So I come from that long line of creative documentary kind of people. Maternal people, I guess. And I naturally, because of that, hated photography.
Of course.
So I wanted to rebel, but I didn't think anything of it. I didn't think I would like it, even though I was around it all the time. But I went to high school after being homeschooled for 9 years, actually. And I'm sitting in the guidance counselor's office, and he tells me I have to pick an elective, which, the way, was a word I'd never even heard before. I had no idea what that meant. I'm like,
being homeschooled.
Okay, yeah, what's an elective? So he starts rattling off all of my choices, and woodworking and graphic design and photography. And my mom's there, and I'm like, I guess I'll make her happy today, and I'll say photography. And I just fell in love. And it was darkroom photography back then. So the smell of the chemicals, watching your photo just magically appear on this paper, unbelievable. I never looked back. And it's funny, when I was in high school, my high school photography teacher was a wedding photographer on the weekends. I actually ended up working for him for 5 years afterwards before I started my own business. But the funniest thing, my mentality for all while I was learning photography, all while I was working for this other guy, and even a little bit past them, was that I couldn't, it wasn't a real job. Like, I couldn't make a real living out of photography. I had to get a real job also. So I became a Spanish teacher.
Really?
I don't speak Spanish natively, by the way. I actually love to learn languages. It's a weird quirk of mine. So I became a teacher because I thought I had to have a real job. And the same year that I started teaching was the same year I started my business. And I had to leave teaching mid-year, the third year of teaching. They don't like that, let me tell you.
Yeah, I can't imagine why.
I couldn't keep up. I couldn't do it. Spring was coming, a bazillion weddings. And man, I haven't looked back since. It's been amazing. It's been amazing growing and learning, and quite honestly, failing over and over again till I am where I am now, which is not the top, by the way. I'm sure I'll fail at something tomorrow, or at least by 5 o'clock today.
Well, hopefully, yeah, it's not during this podcast. But I want to know, you said that obviously you went to, in high school, photography was your elective. And then after high school, you said that you followed your photography teacher, who was also a wedding photographer at that point. Was there anything in between there where you continued to learn through photography, or was it all through high school and then just on location learning?
I do have a college degree in photography as well. I would say I learned nothing in it, and I really learned everything that I use today, for the most part, by mentoring under someone for that long, working for him, and going to trade shows, conventions, listening to podcasts, watching stuff online and everything else. The real life experience, you can't beat that.
Sure. No, of course. So then I want to know about your first client. Okay. I want to know, how did you book them?
Don't. It's a bad story.
This is perfect then. I want to know if you were nervous, which it sounds like maybe you were. And I was going to ask, how did it turn out? But it sounds like we're going to have quite an ending here.
Yes. So my very first client of my own, and this was after somewhat of a breakup between the guy that I worked for and myself, because he was not particularly happy that I was going out on my own and becoming the competition. They don't like that. And I got this first job. I booked my first 2 jobs, by the way, from other wedding vendors. So I got one from a photographer, and that job, thankfully, was my second one, and it went well. But this first one I got from a DJ, and it was a couple that had gotten married already in like a destination wedding. And they were just coming back and having a reception. I was just going to photograph the reception. And I don't even know what went wrong so much. Because it really was just the quality of the photos. Maybe they didn't look at what I was capable of at that point. Mm-hmm. Or maybe it was the fact that it was inside and I wasn't that good at flash, and my camera didn't handle lower light very well, and I didn't know light direction very well. It was like all these things combined, where the pictures weren't awful, but they weren't great quality. That being said, I only charged $500 for it. So there's that. But I got my very first client to leave me my very first review on Wedding Wire. It was not a nice one, and I had to beg her to take it down.
The very first review was oh no.
It was bad.
So, okay, I know that a lot of people listening right now, if they were to get their first review and it would be a bad review, they would consider hanging up their camera. How did you keep going?
I remember waking up in bed that morning and kind of rolling over, looking at my phone and getting an email, you have a new review, and I was so excited. And my heart just it just fell into my chest. But in general, my personality is not one to be upset about something. My personality is to just fix it. Mm-hmm. So I just went into full blown panic mode. Not even panic mode. I guess just zone. So I immediately email her. I immediately try to what can I do? How can I make up for this? This is devastating to me, and blah, blah, blah. And so I didn't spend too much time actually dwelling on it to where I would come to the conclusion to hang up my camera. And I think that's something that wherever you are in photography, you have to master that. You have to master, own the emotion, because it just gets us to our soul whenever we have a client that complains, right? It doesn't ruin our day. It ruins our year that year.
Absolutely.
So, but you have to just move past that, like feel it, great, but then, okay, what are we going to do to make this better so that you don't go downward spiral and start hanging up your camera when you just gosh darn shouldn't.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I would just, I guess, just imagine that being having another full-time job as a teacher, it would just be so easy to just say, all right, well, maybe this wasn't for me. But I'm glad that you stuck with it, because here we are today, and you're no longer teaching Spanish, which you didn't start
Thank
off
God.
teaching.
Oh my gosh. Every September I like do a dance. I'm not going back to school.
I do the same, but now it's because our kids are going to school, and it's
Right.
like, yes. So when you said that your mom was a photographer, and like, so you kind of grew up around photography, was there anything that was hard for you to learn, like from a technical standpoint? Anything hard to grasp?
I think everything was.
Everything.
Honestly, when I first started learning, there were mostly men photographers. And the reason there were mostly men photographers is because it was very, and it still is, very much a mathematical art when you get down to the technicality of it. So when I was learning from men who had like that math type brain and were trying to teach it in that kind of way. So It was really difficult to get explanations to things that just made sense inherently, that you would just be able to understand. They would speak your language. Or now, that's actually one of my things I do aside from teaching posing. I love teaching off-camera flash to people who are natural light photographers specifically. I want to teach it in a way where it makes sense, because it took so long for me to learn off-camera flash. I'm still learning it. I haven't mastered it by any stretch of the imagination, but that was difficult for me for a really long time, until online education honestly came into play, until a lot more of the old guard kind of moved on from teaching, and some of the younger people, or maybe younger, but newer, came along, so that they just started explaining things differently. Once that happened, it was a little bit better. Now the hardest things are, my biggest panic right now is like, oh my God, if my babysitter calls out and I miss this wedding, like what do I do?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, no, I can't even imagine. Yeah, how many children do you have?
Happened.
Has it really?
Two.
You have
Yes.
two.
Yes, I had a horror story with the childcare, but literally called out like 6 o'clock the night before, out of spite, by the way, not out of anything else.
Oh no. I'm hoping that the wedding day turned out okay, and that you showed up, and
yeah, I was there. Just like a bazillion phone calls. And...
Yeah. Oh, I bet. No sleep that night. Yeah, I'm hoping for the best.
No.
Man. So that kind of brings me to my next point, which is what I talked about in the intro, which was your posing, right? Showing up to weddings and posing. We talked a little bit there about, running out of time, right?
Yes.
Even if it's the day before, you can still run out of time. So showing up, I know personally, I've been to weddings where, in fact, this past weekend, Saturday, I showed up. The couple didn't want any getting ready photos. They just wanted their sparkler exit. So I showed up right before the ceremony. They did a quick little first look and then went right into the ceremony. It was insane. So we got no pictures before the ceremony. And then I said right afterwards, great, we'll head over to the reception area because there's a little lake, a little pond there, and we can get our photos there. So I went. They apparently didn't come right away. They went back to the room to get things. So right there, winter sun sets early. We have nice, tall, mature trees. It's 6 o'clock now and they still haven't arrived. And by the time that they got there, 45 minutes late, they had to go straight into introductions and we didn't have any time for portraits. So I know that sometimes you can just run out of time. They have no time. So this brings us to posing, right?
Yes.
Speed posing. I want to know what is... like, it's not even just posing, but this is like speed posing. This is like posing 2.0. Tell me what is speed posing and tell me its advantages.
So speed posing came about, I'll tell you where it came about because it kind of tells about what it is and why you need it. So I was trained by this traditional wedding photographer, right? And I got that piece of knowledge that I thought just everybody knew. And it wasn't until I started second shooting for other people besides him, and I watched how people pose families or pose bridal parties or pose their bride and groom, that I realized, why don't they know how to do this like faster or even just more efficiently? Why do they look completely lost and like they're freezing during their posing, or they're, can't tell what family member is supposed to be in this picture next?
Right.
And I realized this is a huge knowledge gap for a lot of people, because we all go online and we learn posing, just posing itself. Like, this is a nice pose, and how do you tell if this is a nice pose, and how do you get someone in this type of pose? but we don't learn how to go from one to the other, to the other, to the other, and do it quickly. We don't learn how to look at a massive group of family list and organize them in a way where I can take, 24 different family groupings in 10 minutes, because you can.
It's incredible.
You can. So I came up with speed posing, and what it is it's not the fine tuning of all the posing. It's just reality. It's, if you are a wedding photography, event photographer of any kind, you have this list that you have to get through, whether the bride and groom want you to, or, you want to do it so that you can fill an album later that they bought, or, hopefully upsell them. You have to get all these pictures, but sometimes you get, 2 minutes, literally. I mean, I had one couple that they gave me 144 seconds to photograph the two of them. That's what I had. 144 seconds. And I was...
Hold on. Did they tell you this beforehand? Like, hey, by the way, you only have 144 seconds? Or was it you started shooting and that's what happened?
The groom just wasn't into it, which, fine, I get it. And he almost didn't let me take any pictures of the two of them. I had to look at him like, dude, you are going to sue me later. Like, we're going to be in court because I didn't take a photo of you and your wife on your wedding day by yourself. Like, and he goes, fine. 144 seconds later, actually less than that, they start just walking away. He's like, we're done. And I'm like taking pictures as they're walking away. Like, oh, look back at me. That's so cute.
Yeah. It's another pose.
Yeah, 144 seconds. But out of that, I was able to get, I think, 19 usable images from that, and unique ones, most of which ended up in a wedding album.
That's incredible. And that obviously comes from that experience. So, okay, so we know a little bit about what speed posing is. Obviously, the advantage is that you can get everything done quick and efficiently. But I kind of skipped over a question, I guess, kind of the bridge to get to speed posing, and that's just regular posing, because I feel like just regular posing, right? Posing, and you touched upon it there. We know about posing. We think that posing is just telling people how to get to look a certain way and what looks good or bad, but posing almost has like this negative connotation to it. You know what I mean? As if like it's completely forced and it's completely fake. Why do you think photographers have such an aversion to wanting to pose?
Because it's difficult. I think most photographers have an extreme lack of confidence to posing. It's not the same as just going somewhere and taking pictures of things or figuring out the light or, dealing with objects versus people, because you are responsible for how they look in that photo. And you're responsible for coming up with ideas and doing things differently. And, that person may be completely self-conscious about something on their body that's irrational, but it'll still be your fault.
Right.
Because you're the one that posed them. So, and I think couples also now have a negative connotation to posing. Oh, I don't want posed pictures, because they think old school posed, like cheesy photos. And I tell my couples now, like, yeah, I'll pose you, but it's not like posing, like tilt, turn, smile. It's guiding. It's helping you guys be relaxed and creating some kind of atmosphere where you're comfortable in interacting with each other versus interacting with the camera.
That makes sense. Why do you think, or I guess, what is it that you think photographers get wrong most when they first start posing?
Oh, everything.
Yeah. Okay. Is there one thing in particular?
Yeah. I mean, the biggest thing, I think, even now, and it's when you first start and when you keep going, all the little things you'll learn. You'll learn how to like tilt the hips. You'll learn how to have the right angle on them so they don't look overweight when they're not overweight at all. But the biggest mistake that I see is not knowing how to evoke emotion from your clients and do it quickly. Because again, you have 20 minutes to photograph this crapload list of photos. That's like, hey, get romantic right now, go. You have to be able to do that. And if you can learn emotion trumps posing every time, I think. So I think that learning emotion is actually better, learning the psychology behind photography and speaking to, the people that you're photographing. And it's for you too, because you want to feel confident as a photographer. So if your posing and your photo session directing becomes more relational, it's going to make you feel at ease the same way it's making your clients feel at ease. And all the photos are just going to come out so much better that way.
Always, every single time. Hey, Raymond here. Have you ever noticed that once something is for photographers, it's instantly 10 times more expensive? A white sheet, $10. a white photography backdrop $100. Doesn't that make you mad? I mean, that's exactly the kind of malarkey that I'm trying to get rid of with our podcast premium membership. Each month, you're going to get an hour of additional podcast interview that is cut from the free version that you are listening to right now. And you will also get monthly photography tutorials guaranteed to take the guesswork out of growing your skills and improving your photography. Now, how much is all of this great monthly photography content, you ask? Well, sure, I could charge $1,000 a month. I could do that, but I'm not. I'm not even going to charge $800 a month or even $699, the price of a one-day workshop. No, it is all available to you for just $10. That's right. And if you sign up, you will also get some great downloads like all of my Lightroom presets, my wedding contract that you can use, a model release that you can also use any way that you see fit, and my popular ebook, Beyond Photography Basics. That's a $55 value right there, all for just $10. So to become a premium member, head over to beginnerphotographypodcast.com and click the link on the homepage today. Now let's get back to the rest of today's interview. I want to talk a little bit about your speed posing course, okay? Because I know that you just came out with this, and I'm really excited to check it out myself, just because I've seen what you've done just for me in a free 4-minute video that I know that several hours, I believe it's 5 hours worth of videos in the course is going to be.
Something like that, yeah. Although I have to say, I do everything really quickly. There's not a lot of fluff in there. It's not like, hi,
right.
I'm Vanessa and I'm awesome. And 20 stories later, it's no, here's how we do this.
So then I guess on the sales page, it said there's a 1 and then a hyphen, then 5 hours of video. So I don't know if that means 1 5-hour long video or 5 1 hour long.
There are 7 separate videos, I believe, altogether. So adding up to about 5 hours of content. And that's in addition to all the supplemental material that I kind of put in there. Like you get to watch a live engagement session just of a real couple, just not me teaching to you, seeing how it actually goes. And you can see kind of the speed posing in there as you go through. And then I also collected, so that, like you mentioned, you saw that first one on YouTube. I collected that video and a whole bunch of other posing ones just in general. So I kind of curated a little supplemental video gallery for everyone that's there and easy to find too, as opposed to trying to search the internet.
Yeah, this is so cool. Oh man, I know. Like that video is from a few years ago, and it took me so long to find it. So like you said, it's impossible to find everything on the internet. One thing I want to know about your course though is that how much customization is involved? Is it going to be here's the 10 photos that you needed at every wedding, everything else is extra? Or is it, here's how you develop your own style of posing?
It's supposed to be how you develop it, because I'm giving you the kind of, like I mentioned before, those quick 6 photos and the staples, the path that you kind of take along. But a lot of it is also techniques. Like I'm not telling you, and then you put their head here and hand here, and that's pose 3. That actually reminds me of Doug Gordon. I don't know if you know who he is. He had something more like that, and that was called flow posing, where it was literally this pose, then this one, then this one, then this one. And then when you were done, you could totally work for him, which was actually the point. The point was he created it for the people that he was hiring to be a part of his photography team.
Smart.
So great. But this is more the back end and the thought process and the psychology behind it, so that you can take what you learn and then apply it to your own system. And, add your own creativity, add your own lighting style, whatever it is. Yeah.
So on top of, because again, I was looking at the website that you sent over for this course. Now I haven't even thought of this, and you started off talking about family portraits. I was like, oh, I didn't even think about that. I thought of speed posing as just the couple, get them in front of the camera, because for some reason, the couple never prioritizes the time for just themselves to take photos. But when it comes to family photos, they're like, we'll take all day. It doesn't even matter. And
Well, you don't need to now. I show you how to do it in I think we got, I don't know, 26 something photos
That's
in
insane.
6 minutes.
Yeah.
Groupings.
So
yeah. Wait till you see the bridal party section. It'll rock.
So okay, so we got bride and groom, we got bridal party, and then we got family photos. Is there anything else that we can make more efficient when it comes to taking those photos?
Which part? Just in the
Yeah,
wedding,
I guess
or
maybe a
how
little
you
bit
do
more
it?
about your course. I know that we're going to be talking about
Yeah.
bridal party photos. We're going to be talking about those bride and groom, like couple shots, and then the family. Is there anything else? I guess kind of what I want to know is there anything that maybe other types of photographers who aren't exclusively wedding and engagement photographers can get from your course as well?
Yeah, I think people who are event photographers will get the most from it. But even if you're just a family photographer, if you do, I don't know, bar mitzvahs every weekend, you're still going to get a lot from it. I do a whole kind of keynote thing that in it, I'm also teaching you the way that you speak to people so that you're instilling confidence in them. Because as unconfident as you might be behind the camera, I guarantee you your client is in front of it 100 times worse. So I'm giving you those kinds of, things to say. I actually do have a little phrasing bonus that comes with it that has a whole bunch of phrases on it that you can use, but it's giving you a way to speak to them in a polite but commanding way and authoritative so that they feel guided by you. And it's very helpful for families and drunk bridal parties.
Those are my favorite. Those are always my favorite, but a little unruly sometimes.
Always a favorite. They really are. But I give everybody a mini vocal lesson. It's pretty fun.
That's great. I think that's one of the things that is kind of missing from a lot of these, because most new photographers just look at the poses on Pinterest, and there's no extra element to that. There's no how to coach them into that position. So that sounds wonderful.
Or how to corral, a 32-person bridal party without screaming at them. You don't want to do that. Then none of them will hire you for their wedding.
Quick side note: have you ever had a 32-person bridal party? Oh my gosh!
Yes.
Oh, that
absolutely. My favorite was I had one with 19 groomsmen. There were, I think, only 9 bridesmaids in that one, so it wasn't my largest bridal party overall, but 19 groomsmen.
Were there 2 rows for the ceremony of groomsmen to just stand up there?
It was pretty ridiculous. I don't remember what they did for the actual
That's insane.
itself,
that's insane. I don't.
Yeah. Ironically, they were super, super well behaved, really great group. I've had bridal parties of 6 that have been more irritating.
I feel like if you're the kind of person who has like 19 close enough friends to be in your bridal party, you're a pretty good person, and it's pretty easy to corral everybody. Everybody doesn't get too crazy. So
yeah.
Next, I kind of want to switch gears once again. Is that I think some people might be turned off on the idea of a posing shot list, right? They think that every wedding is going to become cookie cutter. It's going to start looking the same, and that you're going to lose your creativity through photography. What would you say to those people who feel that way?
I would say I agree with the mentality. I agree with the concept overall, but that's almost why I like speed posing, because it's about getting done what you have to so that you can do things the rest of it differently, so that you can be more creative with everything else. And again, it goes back to, it might look cookie cutter to you, but to your clients, they looked at your photos, they hired you for that, because they want those same photos for their wedding. So it's really just consistency. That being said, I don't agree with just putting the same exact pose every single time. That's not that cool. But when you're trying to get through the stuff that has to be done, then yeah. Get that done so that you can do all the different stuff and you can have time to do the rest and be more creative and experiment with styles and other posing stuff that you want to do.
As somebody who is very close with posing, is very comfortable with it, like yourself, can you give the listeners one quick good pose that works every time and that they're guaranteed to love?
The bride and groom are guaranteed to love? You know what one that I think every couple has always loved is one where I have them sit, whether it's, on a bench or a stair or something like that. And I'm shooting over them a little bit, usually with a 50mm lens. And I have them just tilt their heads together and look off to one side, and maybe have one of them kind of snuzzle in a little bit more. it's usually only even of their faces, but it's such like a nice, close, intimate photo that, especially if you kind of make them interact a little bit there, like tell one of them to start sniffing, I don't know, the bride's hair and trying to guess what flavor shampoo she uses. Something like that, where you start getting emotion from them. It's a very soft, sweet, intimate portrait that you can get of the two of them just from that angle, and just that kind of closeness with their faces, where you don't even have to really worry so much about, their body position and where their hands are and all of that stuff. It's just about
Yeah, I would
them.
imagine with it being that close, and just having that physical touch, especially on a wedding day, is really going to add a ton of emotion to that wedding. So without much effort, without having to convince them to be funny or be intimate or anything like that. So that's a great tip. Thank
Right.
you so much
Yeah.
for sharing that. I love that.
Yeah.
Can you tell me about a time where speed posing saved you? Or no, I'm sorry. I take that back. Forget that last question. Can you tell me about the moment where you went to a wedding and became like a full convert to speed posing, where you thought like, this is it, like this is how you do it. I'm sold.
I don't know, because, honestly, I didn't think it was a thing because I'd always just known how to pose in that manner. I didn't think it was anything special until I started seeing how other photographers did it. And then I realized that, oh my gosh, the way that people build up and break down family photo groupings is not something that you know. So I wouldn't say that I kind of had that moment where I was like, oh yes, I need to do this all the time. I just always thought you were supposed to do it all the time, and everyone did it all the time.
Okay, so then,
and then later I'm like, oh
yeah,
no, no one knows this.
So then tell me about that moment when you were like, oh no, tell me about a time where maybe somebody who you taught speed posing to told you about their triumph, and it really moved you to teach more people about this.
It was actually my assistant, and she more recently even told me, it wasn't that long ago. She was like, I tried this on a recent wedding of mine, got through all the family photos super quick, which was wonderful. But the best thing that happened was that one of the family members came up to her and said, wow, you're a fantastic photographer. Like, you know your stuff. And yes, you want to make your bride and groom happy, but when you are posing family and bridal party, that's your time to shine. That's when the word of mouth thing either happens or it doesn't, because every other person other than the bride and groom, they don't know you. They've just met you and now you're ordering them around. So how you perform in that moment, if you are authoritative, but kind and fun and easy to be around, they're judging you. And it's not by your photography. They have no idea what your photos look like. It's by who you are and your demeanor, and are you exuding confidence and professionalism in your craft.
That's wonderful. That's perfect. That's exactly what I was looking for. I love it. Have you ever had a failure where maybe you were at a wedding and you just thought like, oh, this is not working, or maybe even just in your business that you thought was just a travesty, like this is terrible, but actually perhaps it set you up better for success later on down the road?
I think I look at every one of my failures that way, because kind of like that first bad review, total failure. But the second that I realized it, my goal is to, how do I fix this? What can I do with this? And every time I fail, I'm pretty quick at owning it. Like, this is my fault somehow, even if I have a totally crazy bride, which yeah, that happens too. But, one of the biggest failures that I had, it was more of the business side. I had a couple get married in October and they wanted a family photo for their Christmas card, and they did get digital files in their package, but I always hold it until they're done with their wedding album design. That way it's like, you'll actually get it done. Kind of one of those things. So she was procrastinating about getting her album done, and they wanted this photo. I was like, oh, well, you can just go buy it in your online gallery and just buy the download if you don't, because there's Christmas cards in my online gallery as well. But they wanted to do it themselves on some other site, so they're supposed to download it. And she's like getting mad about how it's $85. I don't really want to buy it. Like, can't you just send it to me? And I'm trying to be, because I was taught, don't give discounts and be firm with your pricing and blah blah blah, and just back and forth, and completely bad. Like, I left her with this awful bad taste in her mouth, and I realized I don't want to do that. Like, that's my fault. that's my fault because I made a scenario where I have to say no. And I agree with not discounting and I agree with being firm. But now what I do, I just raised all of my prices by $100. Now, anytime somebody asks for me for that file, they kind of already paid for it because that's what the file would have cost them, $85. So now I don't care. We moved on.
So what would you suggest a new photographer who finds himself in that situation do? Or how do they avoid that situation completely?
I like to just give complimentary things to my clients. I let them know that it's complimentary, but I don't like nickel and diming them anymore. And if it's something that I'm really, adamant about, I'm trying to make a point with, then I'll do better at explaining those expectations beforehand. But if I don't need to make a point out of it, and I don't think we should, as wedding photographers, make a point out of very much, except to make our clients happy, then, find a way to put it in your workflow or, raise your prices so they're technically paying for it anyway, and then you don't have to worry about it anymore. Especially when you're trying to get into a higher end client, nickel and diming them doesn't work. It doesn't. And they're off put by it. They just want to know how much, when do I pay you, and when do I get my stuff?
Yeah. Okay. That's easy enough.
Yeah.
I want to know what advice you would give to a smart and driven photographer who just got their first camera. They're passionate about this and they're about to start their own journey into photography. What would you want to tell them?
Wow. I used to tell people to never stop learning, but if you're listening to this podcast, that means you already got that down because you're working on that. I would just say, take that passion and hold on to that because it will die one day and then you'll find it again and then it'll die again and over and over. And wedding photography or photography in itself is just something that you have to learn to fall in love with over and over again. It's like being married. You love the person when you got married. You're super excited. You can't wait till your future. And then you wake up one day, you're like, who is this person snoring next to me every night and keeping me awake? Because that's what photography will do to you. It will keep you awake at night. And you have to find ways to just continually fall in love with it over and over and over again. So, remember that and work the hard stuff, get through the hard stuff, but always come back to what you fell in love with to begin with.
I couldn't have said that better myself. That was perfect, Vanessa. Thank you so much. That's it. I know that I've taken far too much of your time as it is. Can you let the listeners know where they can find you online and where they can find your course as well?
Yeah. So my website for photographers is breatheyourpassion.com. Breathe spelled with an E at the end. And speedposing.com. Very unique. You can find the whole speed posing course there. But if you really want to see what I'm up to, head over to Instagram. That's where you will find me. I'm really good at the stories and stuff that I'm going on. And I'm always there on DM trying to answer questions that anybody sends to me. So I'm at Vanessa Joy on Instagram.
Perfect. Vanessa, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I truly appreciate everything that you shared with the listeners today. And I cannot wait to dive in more to this speed posing course. Seriously.
My pleasure.
What did I say? What did I say about this interview with Vanessa? You had to have had some takeaways in this episode. You had to have. There's no way that you can't. I think the experience and the knowledge that Vanessa has shines through like a lighthouse in this episode. She really narrows down a lot of exactly what we're doing wrong and what we can improve upon and how easy it is to do that. I think my biggest takeaway, though, was how you can actually boost your creativity by coming up with a set of go-to poses. Because if you can knock those out in the beginning, then you just free yourself up creatively to get whatever you want and explore new ideas and shots and not feel like you're behind or something. I just love that idea because so many times as photographers, if you show up, you really try to put that creative spin on it or that artistic touch, and you really try to get those creative shots first. And then we run out of time for the quote unquote parent pleasers and the solid timeless portraits. I think what I took away is that it's clear that we just don't have to reinvent the wheel. It's great to get out there and be creative and try new things, but we don't have to go out there and get brand new photos every single session. that they have to be completely unique and completely different each time, that it's going to cause so much stress in your own shooting, and you can just get burnt out, and I don't want that, right? So I loved Vanessa's take. Vanessa, if you're listening right now, thank you so much for coming on, sharing everything that you did, and talking about your course as well. I'm really excited to dive into that. I know that I will be checking that out here with winter time here. I have some free time not shooting weddings, and I'm really looking forward to that. So I want to know what your biggest takeaway was. Whatever it was, I want you to share it in the group. If you're not a part of it already, head over to Facebook and just search for Beginner Photography Podcast group, and you can request access to the group, and I will accept you as long as you answer 3 simple questions. And that's it. Okay, so guys, get out there. Practice some posing maybe, okay? Try something new. Practice some posing. Just keep shooting. Whatever you do, just keep shooting. Try something new. And that's it. Share it. Until next week, I love you all.
If you enjoyed today's podcast, please leave us a review in iTunes or your favorite podcast player. And continue the conversation with Raymond and other listeners of the podcast by joining the Beginner Photography Podcast Facebook group today. Thank you. We'll see you again next week.